I'm here with Michael Weiner, President and CEO of PreConstruction Catalysts. Michael, please tell me about the funding programs that you offer.
Well, I'm involved in project funding for projects that are infrastructure, humanitarian, and environmental through a regulated program, which involves HSBC Bank, as well as private investor, as well as the regulations from the IMF and the US Treasury. And the projects that I typically work with are $200 million or euros and up. They generally are projects such as solar farms, wind farms, entertainment complexes, anything that creates large numbers of jobs or has some great benefit to the environment. And even in countries, roads, highways, schools, and so forth. Predominantly countries like Africa that are very underserved and impoverished. This funding allows projects to be built without necessarily having any debt that they need to repay.
Do you have a geographic focus at all?
The only countries that I don't work with are those that are sanctioned by the United Nations. So we don't work with, for example, right now, Iran. We aren't working with Venezuela, and a couple of the other countries that have not been very good neighbors in the world. My focus is on North American projects predominantly, but I also have projects all over the world that I'm working with to achieve funding.
Great. Can you tell me about a recent project that you've worked with?
Well, there's one project that's undergoing financing right now. We're at the very beginning stages of it, and that's a project that I'm actually working with the developer kind of in tandem to bring to forward. And that's in New Jersey. It's a large sports and health complex that's being built for youth teams to be drawn in from the Mid-Atlantic region. It's going to be a very large complex with a hotel and an indoor water park and a number of other amenities that soccer teams, baseball teams, basketball teams, and so forth will be drawn to do their competitions.
Great. Can you talk about what kind of funding is going into this project?
Well, right now this is a project that will be using the regulated funding program, which I work directly with. The funds are going to be generated through a specialized trading program. They are typically generating more than is needed for this particular project, and that will allow additional funds to go to fund other projects that meet the same criteria that the program looks for. In other words, infrastructure, humanitarian, or environmental.
Great. Can you speak in more detail about the criteria that you look for?
In general, a project needs to be pretty much shovel ready. Meaning if it's just a figment of someone's imagination, it isn't a project that we can do anything with. It needs to be much further along in terms of the business plan, in terms of the location, whether they've acquired the land or whether there's a contract to purchase the land. It needs to be a project that has a management team that actually knows what they're doing in that particular space. So somebody who's been working on cars is not going to be qualified to build a hospital. Those types of criteria. And part of my job as a representative of the platform is to be making sure that projects that are brought in fit into the criteria, meaning that they're sustainable. They don't have to be nonprofit. They can be a for-profit project. But they have to be able to stand on their own legs once the project is underway and operational. Then, of course, the management team needs to be in place. The criteria for serving a population needs to be there. How many jobs will it create? What benefit will it have for the environment? All of those questions that are asked up front. And and then also the person who's doing the project development needs to be somebody who's personable enough that we're going to be able to work with them. We get some projects where the idea is phenomenal, but when we speak to the project developer, this is just not somebody you'd want to do business with. And so we make that judgment as well right up front. If we have somebody who's going to be hostile and aggressive or acrimonious, we have too many other projects that come in on a weekly basis that we don't need to take the time to work with somebody if they're that way. So personality and relationship counts.
Perfect. And Michael, your company also offers private placement programs. If you can describe how those work.
Well, private placement programs is kind of the umbrella term for a lot of different either investment opportunities or financial opportunities. The specific area that I focus in on is an animal called a managed buy-sell program. The managed buy-sell program is something that has been around since the end of World War II. This was started when the finance ministers of all of the various countries that were pretty much economically and physically destroyed by World War II got together in New Hampshire, and they sat down and they cultivated a couple of ways in which funds could be generated to rebuild the infrastructure and as well as the economies of the world, including the U.S. And this program has been operating now, since about 1947, and it's had various iterations that have changed over time, but its mission is to generate project funding for the most part for projects that normally would not meet the criteria of a typical investor who would be looking for a return on investment. The proceeds that come out of these programs are generally 80% used to do projects. And those, again, as I said, those projects, like in our infrastructure program, can be jobs creation, they can be environmental, and they can also be humanitarian. That's the big thing is humanitarian, creating projects that will create new jobs and help get people on their feet by having employment.
Perfect. And Michael, I know you're busy, so I have one last question for you. How do you plan on growing your business in the next year?
Well, the business actually has been growing very nicely and continues to grow to the point where I'm in a position to be very selective with whom I'll work. My marketing efforts are typically done through relationship building, through LinkedIn, through constant contact with the newsletter that I put out occasionally. Word of mouth is very important. Reputation is extremely important. And as that spreads amongst this fairly small community of people, that's how more business comes in. Right now, I have enough on my plate to handle me for another year or two. So, whatever comes in from now on is gravy, if you will.
Perfect. And how many projects would you say you work on each year?
I probably have somewhere between 15 to 20 that I'm working with. Usually there's around 5 or 10 at any given time, but as one project moves on the table and then moves off the table, others come in too. I probably get submissions about 10 projects per week, and obviously I can't handle all of those. I have to weed out the ones that make sense and are more fully developed to the point where they could go into a program.
Great. Well, Michael, thank you so much for meeting with me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you're interested in learning more and connecting with Michael Weiner, go to fundology.com.